I just came from an event, the largest Veterans Day parade west of the Mississippi, down in Auburn, Washington. Now, the issue that they told me what they'd like me to talk about is something I was pretty sure of, and I've changed my mind about. 45 years ago, I went into the military, and I served for 2 years, 1968 to 1970. I was a psychiatrist, and I dealt with people who came back from Vietnam. And everybody, there was a draft at that point. Everybody had a number. Everybody was worried about they're going to be taken in, what was going to happen to them, should I enlist? The whole place was in turmoil. And all of us thought at that time, what a wonderful thing if we could get rid of the draft. I was absolutely sure that was the right thing to do. It happened in 1965. And since that time, 1975, excuse me, 1975, since that time, none of you have any obligation whatsoever to do anything for your country. You are not required by this country to do anything. Now, over the course of the time that I've been in government and been a physician in this city and a lot of other places, I lived in Africa, worked for the State Department. I've done a lot of things around the world. But it became clearer and clearer to me that a requirement that all of us give something back to our country ought to be required of every American. This country, I've been in 90 countries in my life, and this country is absolutely the best country in the world. You have the most freedom, you have the most unending possibilities of any country in the world. And it all came because of people before us who did a lot of things to make it happen. And now we have a whole well, actually we've got 2 generations since we ended the draft in 1975 that have never experienced giving back something for the country. Now, I'm not talking about the draft. I'm not saying we should reinstitute the draft. I just believe that everybody between the ages of 18 and 24 ought to spend 1 year giving back to the country. Now, they could do it in the military if they want, but not necessarily. They could go in the Peace Corps. They could go and work in the woods and clean up the forests. They could work in the mental hospitals. They could work in the schools teaching kids in underserved areas. There are a lot of ways in which we could all give a year back. Now, what's the benefit of that? Well, there are a couple of benefits that I think are really important. One of them is, of course, the sense of understanding how this country is put together, how we got here, how it was that I came from a family where my father didn't have a college education. My grandfather had a 2nd grade education. We were just a lower middle class family, and all the opportunities that I've had to go to medical school and everything else was because other people had paid taxes and worked and built medical schools and all sorts of things to make it possible for me. And sometimes we don't have a sense, we just sort of think, well, America just exists as a platform for me to make money. And there are a lot of people walking around who think it's all about me. Well, it's not about me. It's about the common good. It's about what we do for each other, what we do together to make the society better. It can't be about Jim McDermott and the McDermotts taking care of themselves and we don't worry about anybody else. So when you get out in one of these places that I'm talking about, whether it's the military or the forests or the schools, or you can think of more ways than I can think of. To give back to the country, you discover how interconnected we all really are. Now, there's a second value that the draft did. It's very possible in this society for you to live in a place and go to school in a place and work in a place with a lot of people just like you and not know anything about these people over here who are different color, different ethnicity, different language, different whatever, and never have any contact. One of the things the military did was it brought young men together from all over the country and mixed them up together, and they had to get to know how to get along with each other and know each other. My kids, when I lived here in Seattle, my kids were young. They went to private schools up to 8th grade, and then I said, "You're going to Garfield." And they said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I want you to learn about what this city and what this country is really all about. You got to learn about all the people who are in that school who don't come from a circumstance like you do, who don't think the same way, who don't get the same encouragement at home from their parents, or don't have the money, or are thinking, can I really go to college, or is that really a possibility?" You have to understand, and if you live as we can now live and work with our own kind, whatever our kind is, and you can figure out what that means, you can avoid ever figuring out what's going on in the society. But if everyone took a year and did public service, went and worked in the schools, or went and worked in the hospital rooms, or worked in a forest with people who were all thinking about climate change and all these kinds of things, you begin to get a whole different perspective on the world in which we live. Everyone, as I was standing out in the hallway watching all of you come in, I looked at you, and I tell everybody your age 2 things to do. One thing, go to a country and live for 5 weeks in some place, not a 5-star hotel. Going to Europe doesn't count. That does not count. That's going to West Seattle. There's no, you don't get any credit for that. You got to go to any one of 100 countries in the world where people are living on $1 a day and watch how people live and actually be down close enough to experience it by living in something besides a 5-star. The second thing you have to do is learn a language. Now, when I went to high school, nobody learned languages. If anybody wanted anything, they came to the United States and they spoke English. And we demanded, speak English to me. Well, the world has changed dramatically since I was in high school, and now people are learning Arabic and Spanish and Chinese and all sorts of things in the Seattle schools, and it is absolutely important that you learn to speak a language. Speak. You can learn to read and write. That's pretty easy. Speaking requires you to be able to listen to somebody and hear how they speak, and also be willing to make a fool of yourself. You can't learn to speak a language without making a fool of yourself, because you will say it wrong, or you'll say the wrong tense or the wrong gender or something, and people will laugh at you, but they will appreciate the fact that you've tried to learn their language. And if we're going to make this world work, it's going to work because people take the time to go out and see the world. A year spent in your life between 18 and 24 would be the best year you ever spent in your life. You would remember it for the rest of your life. My first one was in Ghana. I went with something called Operation Crossroads in 1961, and I lived in a village and ate native food and dealt with mosquitoes and latrines and boiled water and all the things that go with that kind of experience. And I think that a requirement that everybody pick something and do something, because it's too easy to sit and with your little I got one in my pocket, right? I'm as up to date as anybody else, and I can stand up here and figure it out. They made me turn it off. They said the electronics of this thing will screw up your microphone. But the fact is, it's too easy to live in a world that's very constricted and not know what's going on out there. So this kind of an event is wonderful. The reason I wanted to take a minute or two to come down here was because I want to say I think what is important is for us to begin to understand the whole society in which we live. And you'll see a whole bunch of people following me out here, all different, with all different kinds of ideas, and have a good day. Thank you.